Welcome to Unmuted Nation, or welcome back to Unmuted Nation. It's time for another cabinet segment, and we've got some great people that were with me for another segment a few weeks ago when we talked about people of color. That great group of people is back with me today. Right now, I've got Jazz, Kia, and Phero. Hey.
Morning.
Hi guys. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Look at all of these beautiful black faces. All right, so enough with the chit chat and the bullshit. Let's just get right to it. There is a lot of things going on, and I think first of what I want to talk about first, and I'm throwing a curveball, guys. So obviously, a lot of people have been quarantined. Some states are starting to open back up, and things are going back to normal in a lot of ways. But people are getting anxious, and I think I think that so many things go into everything that we're going through. Obviously, we can't stay closed forever. And I saw a conservative guy. He runs a website. And he did a rant that went viral a week or two ago, and basically he was saying that the charge to Americans was to help flatten the curve, not for Americans to find a cure. That's the job of the government, and I couldn't agree with him more. Like I'm not ever I just agree with what I agree with. So some people are really staunchly against like agreeing with people that are not on their that agree with their politics. I'm not that way, but I agree with that. And some of those perspectives, people were like, well, I think we can't do anything until we have a cure. That's not logical. It doesn't work. We can't stay shut up in homes forever. And so finding some solutions, which obviously one of the most important solutions is knowing that there is some testing so we know if people can get it, if they have some immunity. But where are you guys on that spectrum? Like, how are you doing? That's a question that I don't think we're asking each other enough.
I'm fine.
You're
And
fine?
yeah, and I agree with you. Said this was a senator that said this.
No, he's the owner of the website barstoolsports.com.
Yeah.
Barstool.
So actually, Carmen Jones, she's actually one of my favorite conversationalists on social media. She owns Black Girl Social Club, but she posted too and was asking what the solution is to navigating COVID. It's not realistic for us to stay inside. It's unreasonable. It's just not feasible for everybody. It's no vaccine, no cure. We don't really know anything. And so she was curious as to how we move forward. And I completely agree with that question. I understand the fear around the uncertainty, but also us staying inside until there's a vaccine or a cure just doesn't make sense because we're just kind of going to be in the house. Even if you're developing vaccines, those are going to take a while to work. And me personally, I actually said this on a show that I was on with you and Tiff, Alex. Initially, I was we open and just give everybody free healthcare so that everybody can have access to go in and get tested and get treated if they need to. And I'm still kind of there. I don't personally think that it is feasible for our country to just stay in lockdown. Look at how many people have lost jobs, and I think it's so easy for people who have access to working from home, or they have the resources to keep themselves and their family. It's very easy for them to want us to stay quarantined and stay in lockdown, but they're not one of these people out here who are without a job. Unemployment benefits are not coming as fast as they were supposed to. Stimulus checks really didn't do a whole bunch for the amount of time that we've been in the house. So some people actually need things to open back up so that they can go to work and start to make a living again, to be able to feed themselves and their families. So I think we should start making plans to try to reopen as we have
in
been.
some way. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we need to understand.
Phero, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we need to really understand and have a clear line of what we consider essential work. I think that's a big issue, not an issue for me, but just in terms of what people, I mean, not everyone, like Jazz just pointed on, not everyone can sit at home and do their job from home. And these people also have families. They have, the stream of income that's necessary to like take care of them. We're thinking about people that, what if not only that you're out of one job, but you're out of one of the three that you may have to take care of your full family. So it's kind of it's a larger issue than just, hey, put everything on pause and stay at home. How can we be smart about this? And I think, and touching on that healthcare point, like I think that is where my mind goes to when in terms of like solutions of what we can do. We can't fight the virus inside. I mean, we have to be outdoors. We have to create. We have to develop these antibodies and develop immunities to it at some point. And the only way we can do that is interaction. Now, we want to keep down the fatalities. I feel like, and I think that's what a lot of people are just concerned with. But I think that's where we rely on the nature of things to kick in. And unfortunately, there will be casualties. There will be things that are going to go on, but we can't continue to just sit idle, because the longer we sit, the longer our economy, our way of living, the way our children will live changes drastically the longer we sit in the house. So, yeah.
I think I could agree with us starting to reopen. I would be much more confident in that decision if our leaders were doing what was necessary on the public health front. And we just haven't seen that done. Like, they are manipulating numbers to make it look like it is safer than what it is. That does not give me confidence to start going back out in public and re-entering the world as we've known it, even with masks and precautions, because I can't trust you to tell me what is really happening with this virus. And that makes me wonder, like, the biggest thing about us staying home to flatten the curve was the fact that healthcare workers didn't have the supplies necessary to treat all the people who could become infected.
And also, hospitals didn't have the capacity, right?
Right. So, and I haven't heard anything about this changing. What we heard was, because we stayed at home, hospitals never maxed out their capacity. We still don't know what the supply is for PPE.
Well, and that was also manipulated into, we got too much. We ordered too much.
Right.
We weren't prepared in the first place. I think with you, especially, my heart is in Atlanta, and obviously, unfortunately, with Georgia, because the leadership is just trash. To see that the Atlanta Journal-Constitution posted an article last week that the governor in Georgia has now apologized for manipulating and lying about the numbers for the third time. And he said it will not happen again. And I'm thinking to myself, you were the first one to reopen. Now, take the politics out of it and just talk about the fact that he lied and said that he said we were flat, then he said we were going down, and the third time he said we were going down again, and Georgia went down. He reported this. People were saying, well, see, we're going down, nothing's happening, and he's like, oh, well, we actually were wrong 3 times, and I promise it won't happen again. Listen, George Bush said famously and jokingly, fool me once, shame on you, and then we kind of stumbled through it. But where's the outrage about the lies from this governor 3 times? Where is that outrage? Like, you lied 3 times. We had a government worker from Florida that came out yesterday or 2 days ago and said that she was fired for not manipulating the numbers.
Yes.
Now, we know in some of these states the numbers are going down because they're not testing at all. We live in a state, Phero and I live in a state that is resistant, and it's mostly because of what we've actually seen, right? We have we got hit hard. And I think people, once you realize, because this is a lot of people compacted into a small place. So I think, we don't want to stay inside. I really don't want to end up in one of those mobile morgues. And that was like my main thing. I'm just not trying to do that. And I think the fact that a lot of people don't see it, they didn't feel it. And I'm not the type of person that is going to wish ill intent on, I would say anybody, but now I'm just going to say most people, because there are that, but I think that sometimes people don't believe it if they don't see it. On the other side, Jazz, to your point, we can't do this forever. So where are the solutions? Where are, we can't. So, and one thing, I should have been more prepared for this. I don't know if you've seen this, but the CDC issued that. Now, also they issued guidelines to reopen now 3 times. The first guidelines that they issued were rejected by the White House. The second time they released them, and now the third time they released them on Tuesday silently. No press release. They didn't tell anybody they were here, but they're on the website. This time they've taken out, and they are, a lot of CDC professionals are saying that they're being just Trump. Everything that they are putting out, they're being muzzled by by politics. So this last time they released the guidelines for reopening, they removed guidance for religious institutions because there was a lot of pressure from one side not to tell the churches what to do. But what was interesting to me, they released the guidelines for schools reopening. And I just want to read a few of these. And I don't know if you all went to school in America, so you kind of know how the system works. I don't have kids here. You had a kid that went through the system recently. Now, the first guideline is where it asks for any child over the age of 2. Now, I don't have a 2-year-old, but I can tell you that a 2-year-old is not wearing a mask all day. A 3-year-old,
42-year-old isn't wearing a mask all day. Like
a 16-year-old is not wearing a mask all day in a school. It's not happening.
No sharing of any items or supplies. All belongings in individual cubbies or labeled containers. No sharing electronic devices, toys, games, or learning aids. Desks 6 feet apart, all facing the same way. This one got me. Distance on school buses. 1 child per seat, must skip rows. So 1 seat in between each kid. So the bus is gonna take 6 people to school?
And the desk thing is also unrealistic as well. If these public schools we know there are too many children per classroom, right? So how do they have the space in a classroom to put these desks 6 feet apart for each student when there are already too many children? Like that doesn't make sense. And that's exactly my point. This is gonna sound
it's feeling a lot like
up and just let it happen, because the guidelines, you can have the guidelines in place just to save face, just like they told us to wear masks just to save face, but people are going to ultimately do what they want to do. And I think the biggest thing for me is just for us to be prepared on the health front for, if there's going to be a second wave, because it's just not realistic to ask them.
Go ahead.
Yeah, 2 points. One funnier than the other one. I'll say the funny one first. It feels a lot like Harry Potter and when Dolores Umbridge came with all the rules. This is just throwing them up. We're just gonna throw them up on the board and see which ones stick. I was now from a serious point. Yesterday I had seen that there is a strategy potentially in place for 50 days in, 30 days out, in which will be in-house for 50, out for 30. So with that, to me, when you have a sense of a strategy that you can outline, people can plan around while still being a part of society and still allowing society to continue its normal day to day, it offers people the ability to be a bit more preventative and to be a bit more prepared. Corona.
Right, and I think with that, people think we would freak out, but maybe that strategy works. I've seen that one as well.
So,
Kia, go ahead.
I have a former teacher here, and I have a student who is now over transportation for an Atlanta school system. He said that there would take 180 buses for 1 middle school. And we're talking about this in the middle of a budget crisis. There are not the funds to even implement these guidelines in our school systems. There are not the resources to seat kids 6 feet apart. When you have 35 kids in a room, there is no room to seat them 6 feet apart. So what
has anybody discovered where the 6 feet came from? Who came up with 6 feet?
Testing of how far the droplets can go. So apparently these droplets are lighter than flu droplets. So when you're talking or sneezing, they fly further than flu and other cold droplets.
There's some really interesting models too. I'll send you some to watch, because you can watch even people that aren't interacting with each other in a restaurant. Within 30 minutes, 9 people had come in contact with the droplets out of one person's mouth, and just within 30 minutes. And so the models, like just watching the simulations, are really interesting. Or if you see them like under a black light and how things are actually moving, it's interesting. The last ones on here, they said no playgrounds, no cafeterias. The children would have to eat. And this is the thing. This sounds like it was written by a 2-year-old, because this is going to create crazy people. No interaction with life, no cafeterias, no playgrounds. They suggested one-way hallways. So finally, students stay with their same teacher, all grades, up through 12th grade, all day. So one teacher, no outside visitors, no outside teachers. So one teacher. We know that's also not realistic. After 8th grade, these people aren't qualified to teach other subjects. So
what you're telling me is it would be more beneficial for my student to stay at home and continue online learning than it would be to go into a classroom at this point, because you can't protect the kids and they're still not getting a quality education or interaction.
To that point, I think that it's probably a combination of all of these things. Like Jazz said, I think in some ways things need to open. It does not make sense based on what we know, because we still don't know too much information, but it does not make sense for us to be opening arenas. I get that. It does not make sense for us to be opening concert halls. I get that. They when they bring sports back, what is it? Baseball, they're already saying that they're going to bring it back. There will be no fans. I get it. At least people can watch a real game instead of a rerun on TV. I get that. So certain things, but as long as I think people putting on the mask and doing life, we have to find some way to make that work. There are places though. One thing I'll say about this is that I don't think that there is a one size fits all for the entire country, because the entire country is not the same, which is the same way that I feel about the laws. And it never hit me until I traveled to the Poconos earlier this year, and I was driving through these sticks and woods, and I literally considered that these people make laws, that they vote on laws that affect me. And I feel like if you live out there, your next neighbor, and I've said this before, is 4 miles away, the law doesn't even really apply to you. You do what you want. So I think in applying that same logic to this, we can't just have a country mandate on how this is going to work. I think local areas have to do what makes sense. In areas where people can safely be apart from each other, fine. But I think things like this, schools aren't going to open when these guidelines for these schools come down from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. It doesn't make any sense to me. Final thoughts on this one, Phero.
I think that we have to come in the middle ground and understand that these two things can live simultaneously. We can be agile and understand that we need to focus on safety, but also focus on comfort and the comfortability of our people, because that stimulates the calmness and the peace that we kind of all need right now. And coming up with a strategy that will innately allow both of those to live, where we are focusing on safety, we're focusing on the betterment and the well-being of people. We also there are coping things that we also need to take into consideration, that people and their mental health need to be stimulated as well. And sitting in a house for 3 to 6 months at a time is not stimulating mental health. It's just not. And that's going to cause so many more, in my opinion, so many more casualties after such, if we continue this. Like, if I throw rules out and just say, hey, we're going to do this, and all kids stay at home, no kids for 3 months, and just think that, okay, I did something we're doing, effort. That's not effort. Effort is putting real thought, real needs being met, and really trying to create and get a handle on this. So,
Jess.
Yeah, I'm kind of in a space where we have to just open and see how it goes. Like all
We
politicians,
collectively, or just
the country,
cities and states do what makes sense for them.
the country, because you can't even do it on a state or even a level. Take into account New York City, right? You could argue that New York City doesn't need to open because there's so many people in such a small place. But New York City also has a lot of people who need to go to work to feed their families. That's an expensive ass city. They got to pay bills. They have to pay rent. They have to buy food. So you can't just say on a city and state level.
I meant to say this when you said that earlier, and the thought came back to me. Over 45 million people have filed for unemployment, which means there are people that weren't eligible to file for unemployment that lost other jobs. So you can add about 10 to 15 million on top of that. All of these people lost these jobs. Some of these jobs aren't coming back.
Some of the jobs aren't coming back. People are getting their
A lot of them aren't. A lot of them aren't coming back.
I lost my job at the beginning of this in March. I lost my job. I filed for unemployment on April 1st. It is May 21st. I haven't heard anything. I have a new job now. Like I was able to get fired, job search, interview, get hired, and start a new job in the time that it's taken for me to even here. I have to get a PIN number sent to me and then go through the process for it to even know if I'm eligible for unemployment.
I've heard that, and I've heard that in multiple states. I've heard that. I've heard that same story. People that filed at the beginning of April and at the end of March filed, and they've still heard nothing. On the flip side, I've heard people that filed and they've been collecting since March. And I think, things like unemployment specifically are really state specific. So I think these experiences are really all over the place. But I hear you and I get it.
I say we just reopen. I mean, the other side of it too is we're all kind of relying on secondhand accounts of what this virus is doing. We're relying on politicians, regardless of which side you're on, they all lie. That is a fact. So I just believe it's never as bad as they say it is, but it's also never as good as they say it is. We don't really know anything about it. And that's been a resounding takeaway for me is regardless of what new information comes out, it's either people take it back, they change it, whatever. Like nobody really has a concrete idea of what this virus is. And just the way, like scientifically, the way that our bodies are set up, the reason why we are able to fight, most of us are able to fight off a lot of things is because we are outside interacting and we're building our immune systems and we're strengthening our immune systems by being outside and coming into contact with little germs and diseases and stuff on a daily basis. And I'm not a scientist, so that might not be the correct jargon, but you get my gist. So us staying inside, we're actually putting ourselves more at risk for disease because we're weakening our immune systems essentially.
I mean, let's think about, I was a pox party kid, my mom and her friends put us all together. We all got chicken pox together and we all came back fine. It has, and mind you, there's a sense of, levels to this. I understand that chickenpox is not the same as COVID-19. However, however, there is some validity to the fact of engagement with the outside world and with the earth is necessary for our safety to develop a strength and a shield against things like this that are coming. I do understand that COVID is kind of
it's a phenomenon because
it's a phenomenon. We haven't dealt with this, or something like this in a very long time. At least in modern times, we have not dealt with this in modern times.
Well, we don't know. I think the trouble here is that people are listening to politicians. Probably after week 2, I'll listen to what they say because I do this, but I give nothing they say any validity at all. Like, I haven't listened to a politician. I'm more interested in studies, and not even just the scientists and the doctors that are put before us, but also from other perspectives. So I've kind of looked into this, and I think you should, like I said, would you have taken medical advice from Donald Trump before he was president?
No. And I think that is a huge part of our problem. We're dependent on business leaders and politicians to lead a public health crisis. And I think I am hyper surrounded by medical professionals. My friends are running medical clinics here in Atlanta. My sister is an ER nurse here in Atlanta. My father is a doctor in a small town in Alabama. So I am constantly engaging with medical professionals. They are all saying it is not safe for us to go out. We do not have the resources to properly care for people. So, and I think until we listen to what the medical professions are saying, making a plan to go out and start re-engaging in life as normal is doing a huge disservice to marginalized people. And most of those people who are being hurt are Black and brown people. And we have to do better by those people because no one is showing up to provide them with the health care that they need to even have a chance to combat this illness. And this isn't the first time that this administration has manipulated the CDC. Within the first 6 months that they were in control, they gave them a list of 7 words that they weren't allowed to say that were scientific words. So until we can handle that part, I think we are setting ourselves up for a failure that is going to touch us personally in ways that we are not imagining.
I think all the perspectives are valid, and I think the notion that we do have data that shows that it disproportionately affects Black and brown bodies. And my thought when I watched the Barstool's rant, and he was like, you know, it's my kind of talking, a whole bunch of cursing, all of that. It was great, but I agree with him for people that have means. He said, I would rather die from COVID-19 than have to start my business over. Considering the data about Black and brown, he literally said those words. And so considering the data of Black and brown people dying, and a lot of these people don't own businesses, my response to that is most Black people would rather stay safe than dying working for your white ass. And
my ancestors have died for the economy before. I'm uninterested in doing that again.
Well, and I think going back to the forefront of this, if you were listening to politicians, a lot of them were coming out saying, well, I would just love to die so that my child could have a great American economy. Well, we know that no matter what happens, we are at least 3 years from any type of minimal bounce back. So a lot of people are going to be hurting for a long time. Mm-hmm. So it's either we reopen and then the hurt extends longer. That's another perspective of it. And we just figure it out for however this lasts or however long this lasts, or we try to like navigate through it and let them you know, give us some the healthcare professionals get prepared so that we can treat it, so that people can at least go back to doing life with other people, because I think human interaction is really important.
I have one more thing to say about like the exposing in our immune system. One thing that is happening from that is people's immune systems are overreacting, and I don't think the health professionals exactly understand why. So they're being exposed, their immune systems are fighting this off, but they are reacting in a way that they're shooting good cells. And this is why people's bodies are shutting down and they're dying. So there's also that part. Like, there are things about this disease that we don't know. We have this group of kids who are getting sick and no one can explain their infections. And like, even with chickenpox, we know that can come back into your body at old age as shingles and cause huge problems, which is why our kids now take the chickenpox vaccine. We have no idea what COVID is going to show up as 20 years from now in people who've been exposed. There are so many unknown factors that I think we're just not thinking about. And I know our politicians and business leaders aren't thinking about.
But to that point, because we don't know, we kind of have to try a lot of things. We have to shoot different things at the wall to just see what works the best. Because if we're thinking, 20 years down the line of what COVID can show up as, we can't stay in the house for 20 years, until we figure that out. Like, we have to kind of just shoot different things at the wall. I mean, I know in New York, wasn't there a story that came out of New York? A lot of the deaths were in the house. Like, a lot of people who were inside of their homes were dying. So if that is true, if that's the case, staying in the house wasn't working for them. We have to just kind of try and see what works.
I understand that we have to try, but we have to let medical professionals lead our trying in the midst of a public health crisis.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I think that a lot of this and a lot of business leaders are they are perpetuating this idea that because they're leaders in business, they're leaders in public safety and health, and that's where we have a huge disconnect. And I think that we set a lot of things up with there because there's no data, there's no testing that can back up, oh, the economy needs to be stimulated because of this and blah blah blah, blah. And that's more important than public safety. So I would
I
agree
think
that
that's
we
a
definitely need
I
to.
think that's a good perspective. In that same vein, I wanted to hit on Jazz because you said let's just open up, and I think if let's say we go that route and we're open in some ways, what we've seen a lot of instances, and on this show we've started this new segment called Karen Watch. So this is a Karen, an example of a Karen. And I was mentioning to you guys, this is just one example of what's out there. This lady is really, really, and we're not going to be able to hear the sound, and that's okay. But she's kind of like having a meltdown because she wants to go outside, and she went outside. She put on the mask for the first time, and in this video she's kind of describing, I put on the mask. I like people, and she decided that she's never going to wear a mask again. This is just one example of what we are seeing, but I think the reason that I want to discuss it is because there are a lot of people that don't want to wear a mask, and I go like the furthest that I've gone most of the time is to a grocery store, and but on my way back, on my walk back, I walk everywhere. So on my walk back, I'm like, I just take it off, and it's being outside without it. It's fine as long as I'm not interacting with people. But I hate wearing it. I've now seen like in states that are open, people going into these states, and our managers have social distancing set up, and people just moving the social distance. I don't want to social distance, and I don't wear a mask. I don't want to wear a mask. And they're like, well, you can't be in here. And people are like, well, I have a right to be in here. Now, my argument here is, while there's no law that says you may have to wear a mask, if your city has issued an ordinance, that is enforceable by law. And the same way that restaurants will not give you service without shoes or a shirt, they don't have to give you service if you're not wearing a mask. And in this country, stores can set their own policy. When we go back out, when we're back out, are you comfortable being in places, just knowing with the small information that we have, with people that don't have masks on?
No.
Oh God, it's a scary thought at this point. It really is. I think about that now. I've thought about it for a few days now. Potentially reintegration with general public, because there's a lot of information is misleading as we've received in terms of like how safety
Because we were told
protocols.
initially that we didn't need the mask.
We didn't need them. They weren't as effective.
But we've now seen, we didn't know what the disease was doing. So that's a valid argument. We were told that at first, but there was no way to test the results. We didn't know what was happening and how it was spreading. We had no information. Now that we know that it's spreading in different ways, and just by talking, you could be exposing people because it's a respiratory disease. We know that. So now that we know wearing a mask has some validity, and it's really just to protect others, it's less to protect you and it's more to protect others. The mask isn't about protecting you. And that's where the misinformation was, because ideally you think I put on the mask to protect myself from everything else, but you're actually protecting other people from you.
Well, you innately may be projecting. Yeah. It's a weird place to be, and there's no real answer to it right now in terms of like how that feels. Hugs are different. No, you can't hug your family members the same without thinking, oh my God, is this the right decision? Did I make the right decision? With exposing my little niece, little nephew, my uncle, my aunt.
You're not willing to just risk it all? Like, just come here.
Yeah. It feels different now. It just feels so different. And then again, that is where's the love, but also how I think what we have to do is understand and have a clear outline of how can I protect myself and how do I protect other people, and understanding the practices and that dividing line, because I think especially in talking about reintegration with public safety and society, well, not public safety, but reintegration with society, we need to understand. I think a lot of people want to know more so about how to protect themselves than other people. I think that's just the black and white of it, because innately protecting myself is protecting you, but it's a really big grace area of what do I do, like, and to answer the question of being integrated with people that are not wearing masks. They aren't wearing masks. They have chosen not to. They've chosen to open themselves up and not do that. How do I protect myself from their decision? I think those kind of
Is there a way to do that?
Is there a way to do that? Is there a way to is there a practice, that we can say do XYZ as a precautionary one amongst those that are not wearing masks? I think that's somewhere we can go with it, and that's potentially something we can dive into, or I hope scientists would dive into. I'm not a scientist; I'm only giving my perspective, but I think that's somewhere to start.
You wouldn't. Well, why not?
No, because I think what we've already established is like you wear your mask for other people. It's not to protect you in reality, it's to protect other people. People who are choosing to go out and not wear masks are selfish, and they do not care about the people around them. If you are being that reckless with my health, with your own health, then why should I want to be around you? Why should I feel comfortable with you when you are stating that you have no concern about the public safety?
Well,
and
I think with that,
I want to throw this in there. The city of Augusta, Georgia, just announced that you will be fined or jailed if you come into a government facility without a mask. This is the city government. The city of in the same token, with all of the things opening up, a lot of governor's mansions are still closed. State houses are closed. You can't go to them, but they're telling you that it's safe. So these places are actually places for the people. They are open and supported by tax dollars. The only reason that these institutions exist is because you pay taxes. And so these places are closed. You can be jailed or fined $1,000 for not having one on.
That shows me that politicians aren't as stupid as what they come off. They are just really selfish. They know what this virus can do, and they are willing to protect themselves, but they're not willing to do what it takes to protect us.
Jazz, what do you think?
With the mask thing, like here, I don't know about where you guys live, but in Pennsylvania, it was a while into COVID before businesses started requiring you to wear a mask. So a lot of people were still around each other without masks on. Like the virus itself hasn't changed, right? So mask or no mask, like I don't have a problem integrating with people who are not wearing them because I still can keep my distance from them. Because again, we were doing that before they made, they mandated us to wear masks inside of businesses.
Yeah, well, so one instance of that, right? That's in that same vein. This restaurant had opened. They had outlined where you could sit, social distanced, and the lady walked in. She moved it, said she's going to sit there. When the manager said, first, this table is not available because of social distancing. She moved it out of the way. I want to sit there. He said, well, you also need to, you need to leave. She starts coughing on him. And she's breathing on him and coughing on him and like causing this entire scene. And I think some people are just doing things for a reaction. But in any other instance, if this had been a person of Middle Eastern descent, they would be labeling this man a terrorist. If it's happening any other way,
that's
people would be
literally
outraged.
That's literally weaponizing a pandemic, like literally. And it's
in those instances, people don't feel safe. But I do understand, like I said, it's different all over the place. And I don't think people required you to wear a mask in a lot of places, even in New York initially, because again, people didn't really know what it is. Now that it's out there, and I think just for my own sanity, when I go out, I put it on because I just mentally,
I'll wear one. I don't have a feeling about other people who don't. I think the other kind of like thought that I have around this is with states reopening, a lot of these things that are opening are optional. Like you don't have to go to a nail salon. You don't have to go and like eat dinner at a restaurant. And if we are going to reopen, that it is going to be up to the people like it has been. And like people are always going to make their own decisions. So if you want to go into a restaurant and sit down and have a meal, you're putting yourself at risk. Everybody in that restaurant, if you don't, you know what I'm saying? Because you don't have to go there.
But if you're going there, do you feel like you have to comply with that restaurant's policies?
Yeah, you should, but you don't have to go there is what I'm saying. If Philly opens up right now, I would still, the same thing that I've been doing is what I would be doing because I have access to work from home, right? So I don't have to go anywhere to work from home. I can go to the grocery store. I can wear my mask. I don't have to go to the restaurant that's downstairs from my apartment. I don't have to do that, right? So they can open right now and it wouldn't really change for me. But I'm saying we need to, a lot of people have to go back to work. And that's always my bottom line is like, I know there is a public health issue. I understand that. But there's also a public health issue for people who cannot feed their families, who can't pay their bills and stuff like that. So we have to, there's nuance in this. And I'm not speaking from a selfish perspective. I'm also realistic though about my circumstance, right? My life right now doesn't change much if things open up. So I have the luxury, and that's the other thing, I have the luxury of staying home and only going when I need to go to the grocery store. You know what I'm saying? Or getting my groceries delivered. A lot of us have luxuries that we don't admit when we talk about it.
I don't disagree with you. I think where I take issue with is though I know I have that luxury and I have the ability to do that, I don't go into places attempting to manipulate what they put in place to protect other people. And that's where a lot of the outrage is coming from. That has nothing to do with, they made the decision to go, then they made the decision to not comply. So I think that those people, and this is just my perspective, those people need to face consequences for bucking authority that they think that they can buck because they don't have
now what are we debating though? Of course, and that was never a question. Like I think I'm confused at what point we're trying to agree on. We're trying to.
So here's what I think. Like when you go into those restaurants or these stores and you're not following their rules, you're not wearing a mask, you are putting these essential workers who have to go, who don't have the luxury of working at home like you and I do, you're putting them at risk. That is selfish because you want your freedom, your individualized freedom to be able to shop and eat and do what you want with no respect for the people who are providing the services. And there's a class issue to that because we have always looked down on service workers and treated them very shitty. There's also a race issue on that because a lot of these essential jobs are done by Black and brown people. So all of this is coming into play when we see these people complaining about wearing masks because they're not valuing the safety of the people providing the services that they want to engage in.
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of business owners.
I was trying to shift the conversation a little bit to talk about people that are reckless now that we are open in some way, and there is some freedom in that way, and people are abusing that freedom, and we're seeing that over and over and over again. And then we see the Sarah Joyner Truths of the world out here calling this their freedom and it's their right to do what they want. But you don't have the right to walk into a place of business without a shirt or without shoes. They're not going to serve you that way. They're adding that to that policy. And there are people that are on the other side of that. They should be able to do what they want. I'm not wearing the mask because, it makes me feel a certain type of way. To your point, Jazz, you're absolutely right. Then you don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to do these things. But in those places, I guess my question was, do you think you should, and the people that are there, comply with the policies that are put in?
We should comply with the policies. Like I said, if a business is requiring you to wear a mask, we should. The initial question was how we feel about integrating people who are not. So if it becomes an option, right? Like I said, I'll wear my mask. As long as it's mandated, we all should be wearing them. But if it becomes an option and people don't want to wear them, when I go to the grocery store to make my grocery run, I'll wear mine, but I'm not worried about who else isn't wearing theirs because I can still keep my distance from them.
Got it.
If
Phero, you get the last word on this.
doing it.
Yeah, I just want to throw this part in where I think Jazz just hit it on the head where there's a man, if it's these things need to be mandated, and this is where the business owners come into play, where you should not be allowing anyone in these establishments that do not have a mask. And also, you can combat that with providing these masks. You know, either it could be monetary fee, it could be for free. It's up to how you want to manage your business. But those are the things that we need to like take in consideration. Look, white privilege rules only are good for white privilege when it doesn't obstruct them, or until it obstructs them.
I heard it said this way: "Hell hath no fury like a middle class white person getting their privilege taken away." But you never know. I think we'll leave that one there. I think I just think people should be considerate and be understanding and know that we're all trying to navigate this. We're all trying to get through it. It's not easy. It's a little frustrating. And Phero, to your point, I didn't even think about that. Providing it, I know when they took plastic straws away from us, they charged you. Like if you want this straw, this reusable straw, you can buy it for $2 for this meal, but you can also take it with you and wash it and use it again. So I think that's switching gears. We can all take our hats off, and our mask off. By the way, Key, I hear mask off. Mike Pence is coming to Atlanta on Friday.
Fun times, right?
In the talking about those in the White House, Donald Trump has, or sources are revealing that Donald Trump will not be inviting President Obama to the East Wing, as presidents have done customarily, to unveil his presidential portrait. Now, a lot of people, on the flip side of this, because I'm gonna keep it real, and a lot of the people of I was gonna use one of those woke words, but I'm just gonna say a lot of Black people were just like, I won't be going to that White House while he's there anyway. So I don't think that what I think about this, and then I'm interested and curious about what you guys think. I honestly just don't think that. I think Donald knows who his target is, and I know he knows who his base is. He knows who his people are. He knows who really cares. They really haven't done any. Like, if you think about even past administrations, Republican administrations, the GOP, in some way, they at least had a Black agenda. He's not going to waste time on that because there's no point. Now he'll go out and kind of use his inflammatory language, and I have plenty of Blacks, and the Blacks love me, and the Blacks, and Diamond and Silk, and the Blacks, and he'll do that thing. But I wasn't really shocked to hear, there's a lot of people outraged over the fact that the Donald was not going to unveil the presidential portrait. When you heard it, Phero, what did you think?
I'll say it again. There's a part of me that it's not outrage. It's a violent anger that wants to brew in me. Whenever anything of this nature comes across my phone or on my iPad or anything, but then there's a calmness of why care? He is a vile person, a vile individual. Why even give it the energy? Because it's expected. He's shown these stripes over and over again. He is a horrible. I won't compare him to an animal, a majestic animal like a zebra, because he's just not even human. But why be shocked? So at this point, it goes into a limp of, what do you do? you just look at him like a child and you shake your head, and you just, again, this proves that why you're vile. You're a horrible person.
So you just live with it. Kia, what were you, or what were your thoughts when you heard this?
Very, very similar. Like, we are in the middle of a global pandemic. If you did not want to hold this ceremony, you had a number of excuses that you could have used to provide cover. But Donald Trump is a vile man in the sense that he is unapologetic about his racism and his hate for a man who has done nothing to him. So this is just on par, and this is just Donald Trump being Donald Trump.
A word? Miss HB.
I
Enough said.
IDC.
I think that I don't really. Here's the thing.
It's
what
disrespectful
I don't think a lot of people,
on a level. I'm sorry. It's disrespectful on a level because we've watched the Obamas triumph. We've watched them trial through all of this, the race baiting, baby baiting, birther, whatever, all of this, to now only be berated with this insensitive, incompetent, just vile individual. That's the only word I can think of when I think of Donald Trump, is vile.
I think that
it's disheartening because it's like these people are.
It's not funny that he's vile, but I think that it's totally on brand for him. So I don't really, I'm not upset about it. You know, a lot of people misinterpret when you say that we watched the Obamas do this, because people are like, no one's saying that they were the best. No one's saying that they were the best that we ever had. There's just a precedent that was set by them, and I feel like they had to set a certain standard. And some people think they hit it, some people don't. I don't think what's considered sometimes, especially when you look historically, just about how, and you know, Jazmine said it better than I can. There are liars on both sides. There's a lot of things that go. There's a lot of politics in politics. So that is something that we come to the conversation knowing. We come to the conversation knowing that you have to play a certain game. And then when you just look at the simple facts that, you know, what we know, that if Barack Obama had 3 wives and she had cheated on them all, and I was out here grabbing them by the pussy and all of these things, like, Barack would have never been the president. We don't even have to talk about that ever again, because we know that. That's an innate fact. But I think that what a lot of Trump supporters aren't realizing is that once you set a precedent, it's going to be hard to take that away. And so if the next person comes, there can't really be outrage if the next president comes and says that they don't want Donald Trump's portrait hung. There's not room for a lot of outrage there. So when you start to set this precedent, you're setting a stage for your legacy to really be trampled on, and not necessarily by Barack Obama, but by someone that comes after you that may be just that more vile, just on the other side. So you just really know what's going to happen here. You just never know what's going to happen here. And I don't, that's my only thought about it. It's like, okay, maybe they
because
don't
what
care.
I
Maybe
think
he
also
thinks he lives forever. Maybe he thinks he'll be there forever. And that's why, you know, he feels like a lot of the things that he does are okay.
Oh, he doesn't plan on leaving the White House.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when because he knows when he does, and I hope that they are black cuffs. As soon as he steps away, as soon as he drops that pen, steps out of that Oval, you're going to jail. You're going to jail. You're going to jail, babe. I mean that. So I think that's why, and I spoke about this with a friend of mine the other day. That's exactly why he's fighting so hard to run a second term. All of the litigation against him, they can't really push through only because he sits at presidency. So it's hard to get him to sit and be accounted for the allegations against him and trial him. Once he steps off that podium, he knows he has to answer to everything and Trump Incorporated,
Well, I mean,
Trump
yeah,
Incorporated with
to that point,
America.
and because we don't, I really, I don't like to give him a lot of air. I don't like to play his voice. I don't like to do. I just don't like to when I talk about it. I don't even like playing the clips because people can believe it. You already know that he said it. He's tweeting at. What I don't get is a lot of it is he knows that people respond to everything that he does. He's a master at he's a master at media. And if there's anything that he's really good at, it is getting ratings and getting a response. I say this all the time. He's the only person that had a reality show for 2 hours on prime time on Sundays for over a decade. This man knows television. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to get ratings. But yesterday he was tweeting at senators. He tweets at states. He was tweeting at the Treasury. And what we saw in 2016 was he did a lot of there's going to be voter fraud. I'm going to lose. And then he won. And then you never heard that again. I mean, he didn't win by the numbers. We know that, but he ended up winning the election. And so we never heard him say voter fraud again. Now this pandemic came, and now up to be the Postmaster General is his top donor for his campaign. Is now he's planning to appoint him as the Postmaster General when a lot of people may have to vote by mail in this upcoming election. And so every day he's bringing up voter fraud, and his strategy has constantly been, the more that I say it, the more people will believe it. And we've seen it, and people don't realize it until they consider this. People that don't even rock with him, they don't support him at all, they may hate him, regurgitate his narratives all the time.
It's easy to regurgitate. It's so easy to regurgitate.
You hear them so much.
Yeah.
And I say this often just because of my background. While you can choose the news that you consume, you can't choose news by definition. News is just the report of what happened. And so because he's taunted fake news for so many times and taught people to only believe what they agree with, only legitimize what you agree with. And there's a lot of organizations that have fallen into his trap to only reporting and pandering to what they think people are going to agree with. So that there's fault on the side of journalists as well, but it begins with him, fake news, you hear fake news, and people start to just only consume what they agree with, they only share what they agree with. And I think that's part of that is human nature, but it hasn't always been this way. There was a time when people disagreed with each other, their politics didn't agree, but they could coexist. They could be in the same place. And we're in this place now that he's saying, and my point to this was, I didn't really mean to get into fake news, but my point is voter fraud is coming. Voter fraud is coming. Yesterday, he was tweeting at Michigan. He was tweeting at the Secretary of the Treasury to not allow these people to release ballots early so that these people can start to vote for their primaries in their states by mail. And he's involving himself in local politics in every way. But I truly believe that the more that people hear that there's going to be voter suppression, because you look statistically, the United States does not have in any historical context, any proof that there is tons of voter fraud. We just historically haven't had that.
It's the Mad King complex. When you sat at the helm of power and you have fed off of your own lies, and it's been you become a pathological liar, and to the point that you're believing your own. Well, that is a pathological liar. It literally is the Mad King disease. Someone's going to try to cut my head off. Someone's going to deny me my right to the throne. Someone's going to take it away from me. Someone's going to poison me.
Someone's going to eat McDonald's every day. So I don't.
Yeah. So it literally has been. We've seen it. We've seen it in folklore. We've seen it in history. This will play out 9 times out of 10 the same way. But it's unfortunate because the casualties behind and the ramifications of what he's already done. Someone else will have to come behind him, and it just won't stop there. He will continue, a tirade, unfortunately. So the next sitting president will have to prepare himself for that. or herself. Let's not be sexist.
I mean, well, we know in election it won't be a her. Next one. It's not a
We don't know that. We don't know that. It's. I mean, well, I guess so because there's no running.
Are you insinuating that Joe might not make it? I'm not putting words in your mouth. I'm just asking. Are you?
My goodness.
There's a possibility.
I like Joe. I like Joe.
Do you?
Trump and Pence could be impeached and Nancy Pelosi could become president and be the next sitting president.
I just want Nancy. I want a picture of Nancy in my house. I might do that. And Nancy, if you're watching this, I will have a shrine of you if you run for president.
She didn't want that, but I don't.
She would totally not want that, but
I don't think. Now there is a chance. I mean, there's a number of scenarios that are possibilities. Trump gets reelected but loses the Senate. That happens. There's definitely another impeachment coming, and then there is a removal, and then there's an immediate prosecution. There's no doubt about that. But I think, what do you think about this? Do you think there's going to be a lot of voter fraud because people are going to be voting by mail possibly in this upcoming election?
No.
I think the idea of voter fraud is propaganda. I think it only benefits his agenda. It's not real, which we've seen through his campaigns, through his potential policies in place. He benefits from the idea of things being real, but not the facts. The fact is, we have not seen a history of voter fraud across the history of time.
What if we see it this time, but on the other side? Because the problem with voting by mail is that people will actually receive their ballots and they can mail them in. Now, if they actually make it to the final place, that's the question with the new Postmaster General. But the numbers are on the sides of the Democrats if people are actually going to be able to vote by mail, because there's no way to suppress them. You can't close precincts, and people don't have to struggle to get to the polls. They don't have to take off work. And there's states that already do that. Washington State has never opened the polls. They've always voted by mail. So that's always been the way that they've done it. And it's foreign to them to know that people are actually going out and standing at polling places. So I don't know. Jessica, what do you think? Do you think people are going to, I mean, it looks like people want to go to the polls anyway. Would you, what would be your preference for the fall? Voting by mail or going to stand in line?
Mail. That's all. Okay. Mail. I mean, there's so many, like, for one, admittedly, I don't know too much about voter fraud and the history of it, so I don't feel comfortable like speaking too much on it. Also, I'm just a little indifferent on that anyway. So yeah, if I had to pick, mail, and that's just that.
Okay. Well, I mean,
is that coming from a place of you feel like it's already rigged, or it's already kind of? I feel like you have a deeper thought about it. You just
150%. I have lots of thoughts.
Thank you.
That, and that's exactly why. Another show, another time.
Another show, another time. Mm-hmm. Last question.
I love you.
Political.
I love you for real.
I love you because you knew I was happy.
The last, and I know y'all are vibing. I see it. I can feel it. I feel it. Last question in the political vein. It's what we will be finding out Joe's pick for vice president very soon. He has said that he commits to picking a woman. He has not said that he would pick a woman of color. He has said that he wants to appoint a woman of color to the Supreme Court. We also have the claims of Reade against him. And a lot of people are frustrated. Well, on some sides of it, a lot of people are frustrated that her claims are not getting as much visibility as they should be. Any thoughts on that? First about Tara, and then we'll talk about the VP pick.
So many, actually, because I think, and you brought up this point a little while back, that Donald Trump kind of introduced this idea of teaching people to only like regurgitate and support their own narrative. I feel like that's always been the case, right? Whatever fits your narrative at the time, that's what you're gonna fight for. You're gonna stand up for that. And so this whole Tara Reade incident to me is extremely troubling because before it was, it was crucify anybody who was even suspected to be a sexual predator. And now it's just kind of like cricket because
it wasn't really crucified until Me Too. But once Me Too, because a lot of people were just getting by.
Been a thing, right? It's been everybody. It's been people who like beloved celebrities and all of this. But now because it's Joe Biden and he's the Democratic nominee, whatever. Now it's just so I haven't heard really anything about Tara Reade. And there have been people that have been coming to the defense of Joe Biden when let this have been anybody else, they would have been canceled. There would have been, op-eds, like think pieces, all of that about this person. And I just find that very, very troubling. And it just goes to people will stand up and they will fight for whatever fits their narrative, right? Joe Biden, they want him to win the presidency. He, for whatever reason, he's been Uncle Joe. But remember, like, when there were so many Democratic nominees, people were trying to get Joe out of here. And so now there's so much support and we've kind of muffled this sexual assault allegation or whatever it is. And I just find that very troubling. I find that very troubling.
I agree. And I hear that a lot. I think a lot of people, in response to that, I'm going to key up, and Phero, I'm going to come to you next. I think a lot of people are saying Joe up, and this has nothing to do with it because this is an allegation that should be investigated. Joe has said it should be investigated. A lot of people speaking for him have said that. He's like, investigate it, go through it. I didn't do it. That's his stance. But a lot of people are saying this one Tara Reade, or Tara, however you say it, I think it's Tara, in comparison to the 26 that were never investigated because the Republicans muzzled them. It's really no comparison. But to your point, I totally agree. I think that people are doubling down because it's Uncle Joe one way or the other. I mean, there are things that, and I often say this, if you go back and when you look for something, you'll find it. There's tons of footage of him just being really handsy with people. And at the time that was really acceptable. When I did
for anybody else, they would have got them the fuck out of there. If that was anybody else in that footage, they would have got them the fuck out of here.
I agree with you. I when I went back and looked at it, and this is why I'm totally, he has been in the Senate since 1973. First of all, I just feel like that is insane because that's less than 10 years after Black people even had the right to vote in this country. So he's been there for a long damn time. Joe Biden, so he went from 1973 to 2009. He was a senator until January 15, 2009. January 20th, he became the vice president. So he's just been in these, we've been funded, basically paying Joe since 1973. All of us have just been paying him for this long. And there's really been not, like, to your point, anybody else, but we weren't in a time, there was a time that being handsy was acceptable behavior. And now we moved it forward and we have tried to apply, which I can't say it's wrong or right, a lot of Me Too principles to things that happened in the past. And we're applying them to scenarios. Now, and I'm not talking about rape or sexual assault. I'm talking about just minor things like that would have passed in the past. We are applying new principles to things that already happened. In the case of Joe, I don't really know. I don't know what the right answer is for people aside from saying that, agreeing that her claims should be founded. They should be investigated. They should understand and really kind of look into them. And then people should be able to decide for themselves. Sorry for me just rambling there. Kia.
I think you're right. I think we have to investigate the claims. I think not investigating them gives people more opportunity to speculate. And the closer we get to November with people creating their own story without founded facts, although who even knows if that matters in elections anymore, the worse off Joe is going to be. Now, in a world where we are always have in front of us we have two candidates and we have to vote for the lesser evil, I think that we can all agree that Joe Biden is the lesser evil in this situation. Like, he wasn't my candidate, but he is the candidate who is going to get closest to my political views and the policies that I would like. He is the candidate who is going to put the best judges on the federal and Supreme Court benches. So we should investigate. We should know what happened, and if there was a crime committed, if there was harm done, then we should replace the candidate. Like, not doing something falls away from the values that Democrats proclaim
that they
believe in. Yes.
I agree 100%. Phero.
I just want to say at this point, I just find that it's so disheartening to know that our country will accept the male misogyny over a woman's temperament, or say that is worse. Well, we can't have a sitting woman's president because of temperament, because of natural. She doesn't have, or is viewed as, the overarching view is she doesn't have the ability to maintain her temperament. Yet we will tolerate a running mate that has, or someone that's running to have a history, a speckle of male misogyny, whether it be in the gaze of force, or over, or handsy, or whatever. In terms of Joe. I don't know, because he wasn't my candidate. I don't have much of an opinion, not say much of an opinion, and to back to that, I think that he is the lesser of two evils. I would agree with that. He does serve a purpose that suits my agenda, but how many times are we going to just settle for this candidate suits my agenda?
I totally
other than,
and I think my question for you and Kia both, because you both said he wasn't my candidate, do you feel like, especially that because he wasn't your candidate, he is the candidate, that you should do some research into it, because you will be asked and people will approach you like, you're voting for this person, why?
It forces you to do so, especially when you stand by.
I just ask the question because when I ask the other side often, well, when I ask any side, sometimes people just don't know. I like this or I like that. And a lot of people are one-issue voters. When I ask people that are voting for Donald Trump, I like him. He's my guy. He speaks for me. And so that says so much to me, because I just really don't know. Like, when someone says something like, he speaks for me, like, he says a lot of things that I just could not see the average person aligning themselves with. But there could just be one issue that they're talking about, but people aren't often able to voice that. So what do you think about that?
I think that it forces you to answer the question. It forces you to do so. Investing in a candidate, in a presidential candidate, I think we all fall into the pomp and circumstance of the whole presidential election, right? There is a sense of systematic strategy that goes along with it that we have, and that we put aside in our brain, and ultimately think that if I look at his policy and look at his views and what he says forthright, this candidate will fit what I think my country should be built on, and so forth and so on. I think that a lot of people, what you shouldn't do is fall within the crack and fall into that I'm not going to vote at all. I refuse to do that. I think that a lot of people, when it comes to, especially a decent amount, I'm going to say Democrats, they do fall into it wasn't my candidate, so I'm not going to vote for anyone. And I think that that's a contribution to the overall problem. If Joe and Hugh are Democrat and he is the party header or party running, he's leading the party. You have to do your due diligence and look into his policy and look into what is being discussed. and be proactive. There may be things that are found out that you actually don't agree with. I have not invested the energy or the time yet into Joe's policies. I don't think he's released or his running. I don't think he's released a lot of it as of yet. But I do plan on
He
doing my due
released his
diligence.
what is it? He released a policy for Black people called "Lift Every Voice,"
which is
Oh,
essentially an outline of Michael Bloomberg's like green initiative, right?
What I didn't like about it is it was a list of demands and not a list of and I read it thoroughly. It's just a list of demands and what I want and I will demand, but you're still not saying what you do. And so for me, that's what kills it for me, because a lot of politicians say, well, I'm gonna demand this and we should have this and I'm gonna demand this.
And no
Okay.
Elizabeth Warren plans.
well, the thing is, regurgitation is easy.
But
We
so
talked about that.
that's the question that I have, and I don't know how much time we have, but I always want to ask this question, and it's not to be divisive or to be a contrarian, but when people are saying like vote for the lesser of two evils, but we don't even know what his policy is, how do you know he's the lesser of two evils?
So, okay, here's what I have gathered from what I knew about Joe from when he first ran from president in my voting term, which was, I believe, 2008 with Barack Obama, to what I've seen throughout this campaign. Joe is running to go back to normal, to go back to what we were when Barack Obama was president, to go back to what we were when Bill Clinton was president. I am a progressive Democrat, so I believe in big, bold ideas, and I want to see policies that are going to move us forward, particularly help move marginalized people from the margins into the center, help to bring equity to our political dynamic and the way we live day to day. So my beliefs are much more in line with an Elizabeth Warren and a Bernie Sanders.
But you know what the difference is. You know what you're looking for.
Yes.
You know what you are, and you have defined that. So you're specifically looking for these things when a lot of voters have not.
Yes.
They kind of have things that they agree with and things that they don't, so they haven't made any type of definition.
Right. So what I'm doing when I'm looking at Joe Biden and Donald Trump, I'm looking at who are the organizations that I'm working with, the Color of Changes, the MoveOn.orgs, all of these progressive advocate organizations. Who are they going to be able to work with to get some of their policy ideas on the table and move forward? That's not going to be a Donald Trump, but Joe Biden can be moved forward on some of the things that are on my agenda. So that is what I mean when I am talking lesser of two evils.
So it's not everything that's on your agenda, and it's not whether he's this good, Samaritan, but your lesser of two evils is he's going to get some of my things pushed through.
Yes.
And I think that's so important for people to understand the difference of, it's not about he's going to do everything that you want them to do or your initial candidate want them to do. It's about what he's able to achieve, and if achieving that is one, on his agenda, and two, the probability of it being him against the candidate that's running. So I would agree with that. Like, it's not, I'm sure he's not going to have everything that I'd like to have done. Only president that will have everything that I want to get done is me.
Jazz,
I
gotta push this one. Jazz, last word on that.
I just say, Kia, I appreciate you spelling that out. The reason why you will vote for Joe Biden over Donald Trump. And I just implore everybody else to do the same thing. Like, I completely agree. No candidate is going to have every single thing on your list. But if we're going to have this argument and just pledge our loyalty to one party as, and I won't even say our, right? Because everybody has their own views. But if you're going to pledge your loyalty to one party, make sure that you're getting something out of that. Don't just do it because I want the other side to win. And I just, like I said, I implore everybody, go in and try to find issues or policies that align with what your beliefs are before you decide, I'm just going to vote for this side because I just don't want the other side to win, because you're going to continue to slip up. And that's it.
Essentially, I think So last question. Damn, I was trying to move on from this, but last question. So if Tara is investigated, because this is the thing, right? So I was like, I don't really go back and forth with people as much as I did at one point. But at looking at it, if she's investigated, because I think where some people get stuck on this, it's like, okay, so while she's being investigated, do we stop everything that's going on and start looking for another candidate, or do we continue to push this forward and investigate at the same time? If we start to find that her claims, because one argument, and I don't remember what show I was watching, but they were saying oftentimes, women that have been sexually assaulted, they forget details and they leave it out, and their story changes multiple times. So how is credibility determined? And this is a genuine question I'm asking, and I guess Phero, you can answer this question as well. But I don't know how credibility is determined. I think that because, and I'll just say this. I was watching a report yesterday, actually on Fox, and I just have to be watching them to know what they're saying and what the messaging is. That's the only disclaimer. But they were showing that she had, there were just found things that she had claimed. She had claimed she was a professor at this college. The college said she was never that. She was an administrative worker. She had said she changed her name at one point. And the reasoning behind it was for one thing, and now she's saying it was because she was sexually assaulted, and that's changed multiple times. So with inconsistencies, and we know that women often change their stories, my question is, how do we determine credibility for something like that?
Well, I'd like to piggyback off of that, of your last statement. Women often change their stories. I don't think it's women. I think when you have an agenda about your story, it will flex depending on who you're in front of. To articulate something being genuine, and a genuine someone having I think canceling that. What is your motive of coming forward now? This man, as we discussed, has been in our government since
1973.
And you're choosing his presidential campaign. You're choosing his campaign to come forward and profess your truth and his involvement.
Or maybe she feels like he doesn't deserve to be running for president. Maybe she doesn't feel like he deserves the main stage. Like, I'll tell you one thing about trauma, specifically sexual trauma within women. We've already seen how hard it is for women to come forward, how they're attacked, how they're discredited for every little thing. The other side of that is stories change over time, because your brain, when you're experiencing a traumatizing event, your brain tries to block shit out. So sometimes you don't even remember certain things, or certain little details are just gone from your memory, because your brain is just trying to protect you from going back to thinking about certain things. So her coming forward, I don't think it should be a question of why is she coming forward now. Whatever her reason is, if it happened, it happened.
I think
I wondered, and I guess Phero may not be the only person that wondered that. I wondered, just because he was the vice presidential candidate for the first Black president, and if there was ever a time for you to think that he wasn't qualified for something, my thought would, and Jazz, I respect your viewpoint, because I've considered that, but maybe not as deep as I should, because my initial thought was, to Phero's point, why didn't you remember this or say this then?
But I believe she has said something before. I do not believe 2020 is the first time that she has made accusations against Joe Biden, and I would have to Google to verify that. But
I think the first time that it's documented was on a podcast in 2019. So right before he announced, but it was not. She had mentioned it. She says, and I can't say the alleged word because I really don't know the greatest details, because I've just started doing my research, so maybe I shouldn't have even brought this up. But I think that I know that she's mentioned it to people. There are people that say they remember from that time 30 years ago, and people that say that they don't. And so there are people, she's mentioned it. Her brother at one point has said that he remembered, and at one point he said that he doesn't. So to your point, Jess, people do They forget things that happen or they block certain things out. But I think the questioning, just from my thought process around where she thought he would be qualified, my first thought was him running for president. And more so, there's one side of the political spectrum. The Democrats get a lot of flack just because they don't fight dirty. They lie just like everybody else, but they just don't fight dirty. If Republicans were really behind this, and that's the other side of it, right? They would have uncovered this if this was actually Republican. So I don't want to put this as a ploy. I don't think that she has a motive. I don't know. But my question that I wanted to understand is, how do we determine credibility, knowing that women block things out, the story may change, but we are tasked with finding credibility. How do we even do that? And who is the determiner?
The thing is, there's a very thin line between truth and credibility. Once you go on the side, once you anchor yourself on the side of truth, you have to be very steadfast on keeping and maintaining that by maintaining it and by defaulting on your credibility, or it will, if you don't maintain the truth, it defaults your credibility. I think that once we start uncovering, and once she's had the platform, I do think that this should be raised with. And your question is, who should it be raised with? Who should be doing the investigation and allowed?
Well, not who should do the investigating, but who, once the investigation is done, because I don't even know who does that. How do we determine this was a credible story or this wasn't credible? In line with, we should believe women, but she should also be investigated. Like, I just feel like that is a.
I think the true nature of the justice system.
I think to be completely frank with you, without proof, right, that this actually happened, it probably won't go anywhere. You know what I'm saying? Like, if she can't prove, or if he doesn't admit, and if she doesn't have undeniable, like, we've seen this so many times, like, men have been accused of things, but if there is not proof of it, then nothing happens. And I'm very aware that people lie about all sorts of things. Like, we know in the past, women have lied about being sexually assaulted and the details of those things. So I'm not even on the side of just believe anybody without any type of proof. My critique of the way that this is being handled is that Joe Biden isn't being kind of crucified in the court of public opinion like everybody else. So I don't really have an answer as to, like, how to prove her credibility or what happens if it's investigated, because we don't know. And because it was so long ago, we might not be able to find anything. All I can speak to is my own experience with sexual trauma and understanding, like, how that works and how you block things out. So your memory of it, the human brain, our memories are supremely unreliable anyway, right? So things can change over the course of time, especially that much. My whole issue with the way that this is being handled is that everybody else gets crucified in the court of public opinion and Joe Biden doesn't. So I don't know what the solution is. I don't know what the outcome.
The crucifixion is coming, but this time it's not from his side. So, but point taken. Last words on this. Kia, go ahead.
I don't know what to say. I'm still pondering the question, like, how do you determine credibility? And I think that has been our problem with sexual assault cases long before we get to Joe Biden and Tara Reade. I think for so long we have been taught that boys will be boys, and we've given so much leeway to he didn't mean it, it was just a joke, that we really have to reevaluate, and we have to do a better job of listening to women and their experiences without that frame of boys will be boys, or and believing women without always running to the defense of men, because by and large, the percentage of people who lie about sexual assault is minuscule compared to the percent of people who never report their assault. Like, I've never talked about mine. So I think we have to be careful with our language when we're talking about that, so that we aren't making it harder for other victims of sexual assault in trying to determine if a claim is legitimate.
I've actually heard that perspective before, and I agree with that. Phero, your final thoughts here.
I want to piggyback off what Kiss just said as well. It's going to be it will be ultimately difficult, and we have to be very thoughtful about how we uncover this kind of story. And it's not just about Joe. It's about the women and the men, the children, everyone that potentially be affected by, sexual assault, and telling that story and that truth. People do. I don't want to err to the side of people. People do lie, because we know that, and people also do tell the truth. I think it's to get to the crux of this story, and to really like understand how it benefits Joe to ultimately uncover this. He needs to be behind the truth of it as well. And it needs to be done early on.
So far, from what he said and what he's allowed them to look into, so far he has been. So far he has said, and aside, we can't really say him saying I didn't do this is not him. He's said investigated, look into it, said yes to opening up, and there are certain institutions that have decided not to look into things, but not on his volition. He's actually green-lighted that. So I don't want to badger him on that point. If there's anything he said, because he's been questioned about that. You would just with the election of Brett Kavanaugh for the Supreme Court, he was at the forefront of women should be heard, their claims should be investigated. That's been brought back up to him multiple times in multiple interviews over the last few months. And each time he said, and I still stand by what I said, this should exactly happen with her. Look into it as much as possible. So to your point, Phero, I didn't say that at all. I just wanted to say that for people that are watching, standing behind him, and like, well, he has said this. I wanted to put that out there.
And to be fair, assailants don't want the truth to come out. An ally does. Mm-hmm. An ally will fight for the truth to come out, even if the allegations are against them. And I think that with Joe, that should reign forward. Only because it's to his benefit to especially get it done further early on, not to allow the narrative to be spun or said by the assailant, quote unquote. It's the alleged assailant. I mean, the alleged victim. If these allegations are brought up against him and they are not, in fact, true, he needs to be very much vigilant in saying, "Hey, this is not why. These are the documents that support why not. I don't know this woman. This is the truth." And be forthcoming, to that, opposed to just not being active in the research and the investigation.
He's been in the Senate since '73, so he knows what type of evidence is sufficient or not. So and I'm not saying either way, right? But to your point, he could be all for this to be investigated because he knows you can't substantiate the claim. He could have done it. You know what I'm saying? He could have done this and just knows that he's been in the Senate so long. He knows how the game works. He knows what they're going to look for. There could be no evidence, and he knows that if there's no evidence, then essentially there's no crime. That could be the reason why as well. I don't know, but I'm just offering another perspective of that. Like he could be supporting this because he knows we're ain't gonna find shit.
Totally understand. And I mean, it's clear to me that I could talk to you all day because there was other things that I wanted to talk about. We're not going to get there. And I have to leave this here because I'm totally out of time. I literally had a whole bunch of things. So, and I guess it's been too long since you guys have been here. That's the problem. It's been too long.
I think we got to start coming back more often. Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to talk to the team about it today because it's like the conversations all make sense. all perspectives are valid. We need all perspectives. And the whole purpose, like the only purpose of this is so that people hear this and they stop thinking in one way or letting something that they don't know why they have an opinion. You should have one, but you should really, really dive into it. And I think what I love about having you guys here is that all of your perspectives are different. They're grounded, and it's just that. I'm not here to sway you. I want to hear what it is. And while we might get heated and go there, at the end of it, this is where I am. This is where I am on it. And I said this yesterday, like Auntie Maxine said. I said what I had to say, and I'm done with it.
That's why it's so important to you have to be open to other perspectives, right? And that's why I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy voicing my own perspective, but I enjoy more listening to other people because there are some things that I don't know, and I'm always curious, right? That's the biggest part about me is I'm always curious, and I always want to learn anything that I can learn. So talking to people
what I also know about you, and I try to be the same way. If it's something I hadn't thought of, I'm gonna reconsider where I am. My mind can be changed, and I think that's what's beautiful. And I really believe that's what unmuted people are all about. Jazmine, how do people keep up with you?
At J Henley-Brown _ on Twitter. Only Twitter.
Only Twitter. All right. Phero, how about you?
If you are Insta savvy, you can reach me at P Poppington. That's P.Poppington or on Twitter at Phero _ and I'm doing a great Insecure HBO commentary. So if you're into it, let's go.
Kia.
Kia Speaks on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
Listen. And I am Alex Unmuted on everything, Twitter, Instagram, and .com. That is going to do it for me. Remember, as I always say, today is greater. Believe it, speak it, and live it. You have to make the choice to be great. Your situation is not your destination. Instead, make it your motivation. I'm out of here. Unmuted Nation continues tomorrow, and the BossFM Talk programming continues for you now. Have a great
Unmuted Nation, weekdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on BossFM Talk.